The impact of steady-state exercise on the neuromuscular system. A muscle spindle is a specialized sensory organ located in between extrafusal muscle, which interprets signals sent from the central nervous system that say how a muscle should contract. According to Frank Whitmore on sportsrec.com, muscle spindles determine the angle and position of a joint, the velocity of movement, and the amount of tension on a muscle to provide a view constantly of the relative position of a body part at any time. During steady-state exercise, muscle spindles control the contraction of muscles, which are slow movements given that athletes are working submaximally. Located at the joint of skeletal muscle and tendons, Golgi tendons are made up of collagen and sense tension in the muscles when they are contracted to prevent overstretch. They send efferent signals along sensory neurons detailing the force being exerted on the muscles and where. WiseGeek.com defined Golgi tendons as a proprioceptive sensory receptor. During steady-state exercise, the Golgi tendon is stimulated by one of either a contraction or stretch of the muscle. The Golgi tendon then causes a myotatic reflex, stopping the muscle from overstretching or overtensing, which would cause injury. Steady-state exercise results in an increase in muscle pliability. This is because of a process which begins with chemoreceptors in the blood detecting an increase in carbon dioxide in the blood and the need for more oxygen. These receptors in the peripheral nervous system send impulses to the medulla oblongata in the central nervous system, which responds by stimulating the SA node to increase cardiac output. Consequently, there is more blood in the muscles. This causes an increase in muscle temperature, allowing for greater pliability. According to Van Thompson on azcentral.com, the burning of calories, the rapid supply of blood and oxygen, and the repeated contractions that are the hallmarks of strenuous exercise can all elevate your muscle temperature by a few degrees. The transmission of nerve impulses increases during steady-state exercise. This is because, for the first 3 minutes, factors like blood pressure and oxygen consumption change rapidly, so the baroreceptors and chemoreceptors respectively must send more frequent impulses to the central nervous system in order for the body to adapt accordingly. Furthermore, the CNS must expel impulses in order to respond to the stimuli. After 3 minutes is up, there must still be an increase in afferent and efferent impulses as the oxygen consumption remains constant in the muscles. Once exercise has ceased, there will be more afferent signals informing the CNS oxygen consumption has been reduced, and more efferent signals as the medulla oblongata must reduce heart rate. According to Christensen NJ on ncbi.com, during continued exercise, impulses from multiple receptors feed back to sympathetic centers. The impact of steady-state exercise on energy systems. During steady-state exercise, adenosine triphosphate production increases. This is because the aerobic energy system is used. The aerobic energy system provides the most moles of ATP out of every energy system as 38, but this comes at the cost of speed, as it is also the system that takes the longest. There are 3 stages to the aerobic energy system called aerobic glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and the electron transport chain that breaks down glucose using oxygen. As per Muay Thai pros, the aerobic system has a tremendous capacity for sustained energy production over a long period of time. The mitochondria is the hub for the majority of ATP production, so during steady-state exercise, its workload will increase as a result of the increased energy required. The mitochondria is shaped like a rod and has an inner and outer membrane. The inner membrane is arranged in as many folds called cristae, which provide a large surface area for energy production. Georgia State University likens the mitochondria to chloroplasts in plants, which act as sugar factories. The aerobic energy system is used to provide energy during steady-state exercise. In total, the system produces 38 moles of phosphate for resynthesis across 3 stages. The first of which is called aerobic glycolysis, which produces 2 moles. In this stage, the enzyme phosphofructokinase detects a buildup of adenosine diphosphate and stimulates the initial breakdown of glucose in the blood. As the glucose concentration in the blood begins to drop, another enzyme called glycogen phosphorylase breaks down the glycogen store into glucose in order to maintain concentration. This breakdown happens in the liver and the muscles. Glucose is then converted into pyruvic acid, which produces 2 moles of phosphate. The pyruvic acid is also converted into acetylcholine coenzyme A by the enzyme coenzyme A. This is then taken into the next stage, the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle is the part of the aerobic energy system that uses oxygen to combine pyruvic acid and oxaloacetic acid to form citric acid. According to chemistrylearning.com, in the first step of the Krebs cycle, acetylcholine A combines with oxaloacetate. Citric acid then reacts with a number of different substances in the Krebs cycle to form hydrogen, which is needed for stage 3, the electron transport chain, carbon dioxide, which is exhaled, oxaloacetic acid, which is used to bind with acetyl-CoA to form more citric acid, and 2 moles of ATP. As a result, its significance will increase during steady-state exercise as more energy is required at the site of the working muscles. The electron transport chain is the third chain of the aerobic energy system and produces more moles of ATP than any other part of the system, with 34 moles, so activity here also increases during steady-state exercise in order to keep up with the working muscles. In this stage, hydrogen combines with the transport enzymes NAD and FAD to form NADH and FADH. Chemistrylearning.com states NADH and FADH are linked to the electron transport system and formation of ATP. NADH uses positive ions to combine with oxygen to form water which we sweat, as well as 30 moles of phosphate for resynthesis. However, the negative hydrogen ions produce a further 4 moles of phosphate for resynthesis, providing the total yield of 34 moles of phosphate. Other products at this stage include oxygen. The results of our testing. According to Elizabeth Quinn on verywellfit.com, before exercise, a client should rank at 6 on the Borg scale, or rate of perceived exertion scale, otherwise known as RPE. Whereas at rank 9, you should feel as if you are walking. Between 0 and 3 minutes, our clients averaged a rating of 8.25, which shows they have begun to work but are not still working at walking intensity. However, by 6 to 8 minutes, the average RPE amongst clients has increased to 10, which is now above the walking intensity. This is still not high enough though, as according to Quinn, it's only at level 12 to 14 that you are in a moderate intensity zone. At minutes 10 to 13, average RPE is only 11.2, and at 18 to 20 minutes, it is 11.4. This means our clients fail to reach steady state intensity. However, normative data also states they should increase less and less as exercise continues, and this is reflected in our results, as average increases decrease from 20% to 12% to 2% across the duration of exercise. This means the client's tired through the exercise, which should happen during a steady state exercise. According to Brian Mack, the aerobic training zone is 70 to 80% of your maximum heart rate, which Mack goes on to say is calculated by 220 minus your age. As our clients are 17 years old, their max heart rate should be 203. 70% of 203 is 142.1, and 80% is 162.4. 3 minutes into exercise, when the increase in intensity of exercise begins to level out, average heart rate stays between 157.7 and 169, which is outside the aerobic training zone. One reason for this may be Morgan's heart rate, which peaked at 190 after 16 minutes. This would bring the average up. Normative data also suggests the heart rate should increase during the first 3 minutes, then plateau. In our experiment, the average increase in heart rate for the first 3 minutes was a steep 60%. However, after this, the average increase decreased to 2.5 and 5% over 3 to 5 minutes and 5 to 15 minutes respectively. According to this data, there was a plateau in heart rate increase after 3 minutes, which would suggest the clients were exercising in a steady state. Normative data for systolic blood pressure, according to Joe Miller on livestrong.com, suggests it should be 120 before exercise. In our experiment, the average was 125.3, showing a small anticipatory rise. Miller also states this figure should peak at 160 during steady-state exercise. This as an increase of around 33% from 120, the average resting systolic blood pressure. During steady-state exercise, as the blood pressure should plateau, it should peak and stay at the same level from 3 minutes onwards. In our experiment, The average systolic blood pressure between 8 and 12 minutes was 102.7, showing a decrease of 28%. Clearly, this is an anomalous result, potentially caused by Morgan, whose systolic blood pressure decreased from 144 to 65 in 8 minutes, which is a decrease of 55%. As for diastolic blood pressure, Miller states the average should be 80 pre-exercise, whereas in our experiment it is 88.3. During steady-state exercise, diastolic pressure should decrease as blood vessels vasodilate, so the fact diastolic pressure in our experiment is higher than the average shows an anomalous result, which could be caused by the fact the client's resting diastolic pressures were higher than the average. However, in line with normative data, the values did decrease as exercise went on, as between minutes 8 and 12, diastolic blood pressure was down to 65.7. This is a decrease of 26.4% from the start. One reason for this is again Morgan's results, as she had values of 46 and 68 at minutes 8 and 12 respectively. Morgan also had the highest percentage decrease with 26% between minutes 0 and 12. However, Morgan's values went down then back up, suggesting she was working too hard and not in a steady state before correcting herself. Finally, Evelyn's diastolic pressure increased between minutes 0 and 10, proving she was not working hard enough during minute 10. Before exercise, the average oxygen saturation in clients is 99. According to Amy Dixon on livestrong.com, normal oxygen levels of 95 to 100% allow for proper pressure within the body to allow oxygen to be absorbed in the muscles. This shows the clients on average have a good level of aerobic fitness. Dixon goes on to say during exercise a normal response in regards to oxygen saturation is a possible drop of only 2 to 3%. Between minutes 0 and 6 and 8 to 11, the average decrease was in line with this statement at 2.4% and less than 1% respectively. A normal response in regards to oxygen saturation is a possible drop of only 2 to 3%. However, between minutes 11 and 20, the average decrease is outside that range at 7%, as oxygen saturation decreases from an average of 96.6 at 8 to 11 minutes to an average of 89.5 at 17 to 20 minutes. This may be because of an anomalous result in Evelyn's testing. At minute 18, Evelyn recorded an oxygen saturation of 67. This is well below the 90 required to be diagnosed with hypoxia, which suggests it is an anomalous result. Ignoring this result, the average oxygen saturation levels in the blood was 97, which shows a small increase of 0.4%, which indicates a plateau towards the end of exercise. As per reference.com, the normal breathing rate is 15 breaths per minute. Before exercise, the clients had an average breathing rate of 17.3 breaths per minute, which shows there has been a small anticipatory rise. Once exercise begins, breathing rate should increase in accordance to the increase in workload for the muscles, which should be as small and is detected by peripheral receptors such as the chemoreceptors. Between minutes 2 and 4, the average breathing rate is between 25.5 breaths per minute, which is an increase of 47.5% from before exercise, showing that there is in fact an increase. According to serendipstudio.com, during steady-state exercise, breathing rate should peak at 10 breaths in 30 seconds, or in other words, 20 breaths per minute. In our experiment, the average breathing rate peaked at 35.3 breaths per minute, which suggests the clients were not working in a steady state. However, Morgan's breathing rate peaked at 21 breaths per minute, which implies she was in fact working in a steady state. Finally, during the period of 3 to 20 minutes, breathing rate should plateau as the intensity of exercise increases no further and the working muscles are being supplied with sufficient oxygen. Our experiment matched this, as the average increase in heart rate between minute 12 and 16 was actually negative 4%, showing breathing rate was maintained. Within the first 3 minutes, the clients had an average lactate level of 14, demonstrating they are beginning to work anaerobically, so more lactate is being produced. This means they are not working in a steady state, but by 12 minutes there had been a 53% decrease to 7.4, implying the clients had now settled into a steady state. Furthermore, if the clients were working in a steady state, after around 3 minutes their lactate levels should plateau. This is true in this case, as the average decrease between 12 and 18 minutes is a mere 5%. One reason the average lactate levels were so high in the first 3 minutes was because O'Sheen had a lactate level of 22.5, which was clearly an anomalous result.